Hi, I'm Tammy Allensworth, Senior Vice President of Customer Experience at J.B. Hunt Transport. I welcome you today to really get to know some of the female leaders inside our organization. They're going to share with you some of the things that they've done amazing in their career and some areas that maybe they wish they had a little bit of coaching or insight before that came up. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with you, Vanna. First question out of the gate, coming to you. How do you build a personal brand? What have you learned about yourself? And you've built your personal brand throughout your career.
Sure. So the personal brand actually I've worked towards building is to be authentic, be transparent, be decisive, and be like carry over the integrity, which is critical, the words matching to the actions and stuff like that. So during this time when I've been working towards building that brand, I realized those are my strengths, those became my strengths. But at the same time, the same strengths have become my weaknesses too. Like being transparent, we need to know when to be transparent to what extent. When you're decisive, when you're making decisions fast, like all the executives do, with small amount of data, just have a plan A, plan B, plan C, not fall on the ground kind of stuff. So that's how I grew up the brand. And Tammy, you've been my customer. You know how transparent I've been
yes,
in the industry.
Yes. Perfect. Hey, so I didn't say before we got started, but obviously if you have something to add, please jump in and feel free to add your additional insight. Okay? Moving on to Angela and Jennifer. So we'll start over here with Angela. Do you have a personal motto, a mission statement, a quote, something like that you live by, and why?
I do. I've not always had one. This is something that I've developed more recently, but I really needed to focus on the why behind everything that I did. So I sat down and I thought, okay, what do I want to follow every day when I come into work? And for me, it is going to be to encourage, engage, and equip others to see the possibility. And that goes back to being in high school. I was a part of this program called AVID. And what AVID was, it was for students that were doing well, but their parents maybe didn't go to college or they were low income, just systematically weren't set up to succeed. And what this class did is it taught me that I could do it. Even though my parents didn't do it, statistically I wasn't there to do it, they gave me the tools necessary to succeed. And for me, that is what got me here today. I was able to get into a 4-year college, get that education that got me a position here at J.B. Hunt. And now when I go into work every day, I'm like, who can I influence? Who can I get to be excited about work, to equip them to take the next step in their career and make them successful?
Great. Thank you. Jennifer?
So I absolutely love your mission statement, Angela. And I myself have tried to come up with a very eloquent one as well. And every time I do, I keep coming back to just 3 simple words that have stuck with me throughout my entire childhood. And so no matter what I was doing that day, my mom would always tell me to do good work when I left the house. That might be that I had a basketball game and to play my hardest. It might be a cattle show, which is something that, yes, I did. Or it might be truly a test or something that I had going on with school. And so that's just kind of a mantra that has stuck with me. And I knew that those 3 simple words meant don't just do your best, but also I've got your back. Which was pretty incredible because that was her way of engaging with me every day in what do we have going on today, and then encouraging me to do the very best that I could in whatever that area is. And so I am a little bit older now, and I talk to my mom almost every single morning, and our conversations still end with, I love you, do good work. And so that's pretty incredible and something that I'm trying to pass on to my girls as well.
Love that. Anybody else?
Well, we're going to have to hear more about the cattle shows later. So
Absolutely.
That was my takeaway.
Okay, perfect. Next question is going to come to you, Jennifer, again, and Stacy. You next. Have you ever set a goal that you didn't achieve? What was the result? And how did you change your process?
Absolutely not. Totally kidding. I have a whole slew of goals that we could definitely talk about. I am very pragmatic in my goal setting. I usually go a year to 2 years out, and I really like to achieve goals, and so sometimes I'm guilty of not setting them big enough, I think. But I do set those on a consistent basis of here's what I'm gonna do in the next year to 18 months. And when things go awry, because they inevitably will, I am very much a data person. And so I wanna know, I had a plan, what went wrong, show me the data behind that, so that I can alter my path with whatever route seems to make sense. I have been guilty of trying to alter that path a little too quickly. Sometimes, if you just wait a little bit longer, things will tend to work themselves out. But if things are not going according to my plan, I'm very quick to show me what I need to do to alter that to get to what that goal is.
Great. Yeah, I'm shocked to hear that all your goals didn't work out.
Yeah, I know. I'm just as shocked as you are.
Stacy?
Absolutely. I've had goals I didn't reach. Mostly, though, in the time that I had allotted for myself to reach those goals. And so I now really think that timelines can be a bit evil for us when we self-impose unrealistic timelines or on ourselves, or we're not realistic about how long it actually takes to accomplish some things in life. And so one of the things that I like to share with people is a mindset shift that I had to make after I started my career, and that was I have got to run my own race. So things will happen for me in the time that's right for me, and to try not to get distracted by what's happening around me and the timing for other people. So that was a big piece for me in goal setting, is that timeline. The other big part I've realized when I've not achieved the goals I wanted in the time that I wanted to achieve them, I realized that there was some responsibility I needed to take on for myself, because I had not communicated effectively to my leadership what I was expecting and what I was striving for. And I had not been assertive enough for myself to ask for feedback and to understand, what do I need to do to achieve my goals? What am I missing? And I've learned that all good leaders will help you understand the path you're on and where you may need to tweak it or supplement what you're doing to get there.
Stacy, I heard you say run your own race, and it really stayed with me when you said that, because quite often I meet, especially younger employees, we tend to, and I'm putting myself in that category, but we tend to chase the next position and the next opportunity. And oftentimes we do that as we look around. And I think, that really stayed with me. And I've shared that with a lot of people since I heard you say that a couple of years ago, because I think it's critical, especially to folks just entering the workforce, to run your own race, to crush what you're doing, and then work on the next opportunity.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, I think that should be maybe your mission statement, because it's so profound. And I agree with what you just said. Continue to share that. We all need to continue to share that. It's so important. And to your point, it's so easy to say, but Susie or Freddie, we started on the same day. We were in the new hire class together, and they're moving. And so I often have to say, their career path just looks different. It doesn't mean one's better than the other, just the career path looks different. So I think that that's such great advice.
I think it's really important, especially if you're somebody who's making a career change at some point in your career, because I was late to start in my current career. And so I came in feeling behind, that I'm never going to meet these objectives on this timeline. And so I was hyper-focused on what was going on around me. But it still helps every day to remember to run your own race.
I also think when I definitely was guilty of this historically, is when someone has a title that is different than yours, or maybe in a title you aspire to, you're watching them and thinking, hey, I'm better than that person. And I think that is counterproductive. Once I realized how counterproductive that really was and focused on myself and my own growth, it really shifted me. And so I think that's important to keep in mind.
Yeah, great perspective. Okay, Angela, How do you sharpen the tools in your toolbox?
So my toolbox is filled with a diverse set of tools, and it really depends on what you need to sharpen that day, that week, that month. But for me, the tool that I use every single day and is the most important is going to be my mental health. So what that looks like for me is at least 1 hour of exercise or meditation where I could really just take some time for myself, but then a few hours every evening investing back into my family or my friends and just making sure that I'm really present with them. Then you have these specialized tools where maybe you'll throw on a podcast. For me, my favorite thing is, because I love data, is I will put on this nerdy podcast about Power BI or how to tell story with data, and I'll go about my day, and then I come into work and I'm like, I did not think about slicing and dicing data this way so I could tell my story more efficiently. But my other two tools that I use all the time is going to be my internet network and my in-person network. And what I mean by that is LinkedIn is a very, very powerful tool. And hopefully you're not just adding people to your network that have the same thought process as you, the same background as you. You're hopefully talking to people that maybe come from a competitor, or you follow companies that have a different strategy. So you get these different mindsets of how you could approach something. Something that we say here at JB Hunt a lot is iron sharpens iron. So the more that you could surround yourself with people with a diversity of thought, the more well-rounded that you're going to be at work. And in person, here we've got a lot of tools that tell us what the industry is doing, but there's a lot of external tools as well that we all share with each other. So I'm a big fan of articles that get shared around our company, and I love to bring new articles to the table to create a discussion, because if you're not talking about it, then you're not helping to sharpen other people's iron.
Love that. Stacy?
When I think about the toolbox, I think a lot about, is it a book that I'm reading? Is it a podcast? Is it a motivational speaker that I listen to that helps charge me, helps wisen me to maybe opportunities to do things differently, gives me a different perspective or a different insight? And the thing that I found is that if I take a book that's been recommended to me, or that is all the rage and everyone else is reading it, and I'll read these books and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't all resonate with me, but I've never read anything or listened to a podcast or watched a speaker where there weren't some nuggets that I thought I could take for myself. And I think that's a valuable thing to recognize, is that it's not a one size fits all. It's not that I'm going to read a book and then I'm going to buy into it 100% and apply it, in my everyday life. It's going to be, what are the little nuggets that I can embrace and roll into my life? And the other piece I look for is I'm really interested in hearing about things that have a dual purpose. I want to be efficient in my time. So if it's a skill set, if it's however we define that skill set, right? If it's a technical skill set, or if it's a communication skill, an interpersonal skill, is it something that if I improve it, I will be better both personally and professionally? We do not have unlimited time, but we do have personal and professional lives. So if I can solve for something better, and I can make it better for the people who I'm around during the day and the people I go home to at night, then I really feel like I've made good use of my time.
Yeah, love that. Lindsay, coming your way. How do you maintain your professional stamina?
Well, a few years ago, I really worked hard on identifying my core values and drivers. So what is it that makes me tick? What really fulfills me? And really, when I looked at, what I love to do, really courage, connection, and growth are what drives me. And I'm so fortunate to have a job where those things intersect in my everyday work. And so I think it's not challenging to come to work pumped up and passionate when you get to do those things that really align with your core values. I would also say I spend a lot of time planning, and so especially on Fridays, I try to button everything up and get ready for the next week. I know we're in logistics, so things will come at us, but I try to plan to play offense for my following week on Fridays, and I button things up so the weekend is mine. And I go and I fill my tank up in different ways, just to make sure that I'm getting all that play in. So that's really what I would say, is that things become very clear to me on my motivations when I backed into my values.
Love that. Love that. Okay, Vanna, what was the most impactful thing you did to increase your effectiveness?
Taking time, like you're mentioning too, is taking time off. And every 2 years, I'll see to that, I'll refresh my leadership training courses, kind of stuff, at least 5 to 7 days. And to that session, usually I'll go prepared with 1 or 2 things which I would like to grow or I'm having a challenge with. Things like, how do you handle conflict? And over a period of many years, I used to either shut myself off or change the job, run away from it, kind of stuff. But I had mentors and people guiding me through. So these are the few examples, like how do we handle the conflict, and how do you continue to grow from various other challenges, like the people. When you're managing people, you'll find different situations, kind of stuff. For example, even though I'm a woman, first half of my career, I built being a minority, just like women in trucking. How to deal with men, I mastered the art of how to work with men. And in that process, I forgot how to work with women or how to connect with women. So I realized that half of the career, and then I said, okay, I really want to connect equally with all of them. So I forced myself for women board of directors or women training. I know it's a joke, it feels like a joke, but it's real for me. And then since then, actually, now I can treat all of them equally and I can connect with them equally. And that didn't come easily for me, kind of a stuff. I had to attempt.
Yeah.
It sounds funny, but that's real.
No, it really doesn't sound, no, I get it.
I think that's so interesting, Vanna. We're all used to dealing with men on an everyday basis. And I think, I have to be very intentional around tailoring my communication style. And I hope one day that we can really evolve to, if a woman is super direct and a man is super direct, everybody can receive that in the same way. Because I don't think we're quite there yet.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. Jennifer, same question.
So for me, early in my career, I'm very much a doer. I'm good at, give me a task, I will go knock it out of the park. And as I've grown in my career, I've realized there's only so much I can do. And with retrospection, there's only so many things I can do well. And so probably the way that I've learned to be most effective is to surround myself with those people that can help with my weaknesses and really build effective teams. And it's easy to want to be the doer or say, move over, I can do that for you early on when you're learning that about yourself. But when you can take that and up your game and have a group of people around you that complement you, your effectiveness is just exponential. And so that's something that I've learned in my career. And then another thing that I'm working through right now, just to be very transparent, is I heard someone say that in their career, they learned to move from success to significance. And I thought that was so powerful because there are things like titles and climbing a ladder and things that are typical success factors. But what kind of impact are we having on people? What kind of an impact are we going to leave when we're not here anymore? And so that's a personal challenge to me to up effectiveness another level in my life.
Yeah, I love that. Really good. So it's funny, we had a third-party company come in and give us assessments. Who likes assessments? Are those things real? Like, they get at the core. Like, I just answered some questions. But to your point, I had just become a director at the time and did the assessment, and it came out that I have an area of opportunity. I have lots of area of opportunity, but one that was like off the chart was delegation. And it was so good to have just some third party perspective, but they basically said you will never advance in your career past where you're at if you don't figure out how to do that and do that effectively. For me, I would break out in hives, and like if I was like, no, I can just do it, I'll just do it. But to your point, there's only so many hours in the day and so many days in the week, and you will wear yourself out if you don't figure out how to
Absolutely. And
to
you'll
do
erode
that.
trust with those around you.
Absolutely.
With them thinking that you don't believe that they're capable.
Yeah.
And I think as women, we're used to doing a lot, right? I'm going to take care of the kids, and I'm going to take care of my husband, and I'm going to take care of fill in the blank for days. And I think that there's a certain level of relief when you figure out I don't have to do it all, and there's plenty of people who can do it just as well and even better than me if I make those conscious attempts.
That's right. Actually, I switched that thing once I realized that I'm inhibiting the other people's growth. Yes. That's how I learned, like, okay, let me step back kind of stuff, right? What you said is right. As a mother, as a woman, we'll do a lot of things at home, and we continue to do them at work too,
Yeah, same. And then I thought, you know what? There's a smarter, easier way than the way I've been doing it. So, but that's a whole different, like, eye-opening experience to say, oh, wait a minute. So anyway, thank you. Very good. Stacy, next question's for you. How did you stand out and set yourself apart from others in competition for the same job?
I'd like to say that it was with excellence in my work all of the time. And I can say that, but that's not exactly true. I do think a minimum is competency and excellence at some points in time in the work. But I think more than the work is how you work with other people and how you develop other people. I think that was a big differentiator for me, and that how much I actually enjoy seeing other people succeed and share what I know while being open to changing the way I do things based on the input I get from the people around me. I also think a big differentiator is a willingness to take on the projects that are an absolute grind, that may not be glamorous or even particularly rewarding in the moment, but they're absolutely necessary and critical, and somebody's got to do it. So to step up and say, you know what, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to stick with it, and I'm going to provide updates, and I'm going to see it all the way through, is meaningful. And it's meaningful to other people, and it's meaningful to any organization. The last thing I'll mention is making the choice obvious. I'd like to think that in all promotions that I've had, people looked around and said, okay, duh, that was the obvious choice. Because I was already working at that level, I was kind of already assuming the position, not in a way that conveys overconfidence, but that conveys competency and a willingness, and that makes transitions easy. Because when we're working in groups and we're looking for advancement in our careers, we're not the only ones. And I think organizations have a responsibility to manage morale and manage what's good for a team and manage what's good for the people on the team. And all of that is easier when decisions are obvious and people can be more accepting of those outcomes.
Yeah, love that.
Well said.
Brittany, same question for you.
Amazing answer, Stacy.
Thank you.
For me, it would absolutely be drive, but most importantly, attitude. Everyone can work hard. Everyone has that normal grind tendency in their skill sets typically. But really, if you're grinding and you're working hard, whether it's a late night grind or a daily grind, the thing that can set yourself apart is your attitude throughout that hard work. So even though you might be getting beat down for that day, that week, that month, the way that you compose yourself during those hard times speaks more volumes than really the output that you might be giving to your peers. And that's just an uplifter for not only myself, but the ones around me. And so as a team, and as you've heard, attitude is contagious, and that's something that I want to project off to my peers as well.
Yeah, love that. Brittany, I'm going to stay with you. I have another question. What motivates you? What goals do you have for yourself? And what's your process of measuring progress towards your goals?
That's a big one. So what motivates me, to put it simplistically, It's just growing myself, whether that's daily or having a long-term goal, but also growing my peers around me. So as a manager, that is my biggest goal for my career, is to develop and pour into them. But specifically for me, it's setting myself apart and pouring into, whether it's personally or professionally, how can I be a better person than I was yesterday? I remember starting at JB Hunt, and I was 4 months into the job, and my manager thought I was insane because I pulled him aside to specifically talk about a 5-year plan. And he's like, Brittany, no one does a 5-year plan anymore. Like, it's not going to work out. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to give you specific action items that I want to do, but I want to tell you the goal that I want to be at in 5 years, and we can at least collaborate throughout the years and give little check marks. How can I check off that box? And throughout that process, the best thing that's helped me with that is having an accountability partner, whether it's that first manager I had, or whether it's a peer mentor or anyone in my life. If you don't share your current goal with someone, you're more than likely going to fail on it or neglect it. And so you have to stay in tune with others to have that action item to check off each time. And that's been the biggest help for me. Even that first manager, anytime I see them, he'll ask me, where are you at in your process? And I love that. That's what drives me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Lindsay, same question for you.
Yeah, so I'll just start with the goal setting piece. So I played a lot of sports growing up, and I actually had pre-game anxiety quite a bit. I would get a nervous wreck about I had to be the best. You know, I put a lot of pressure on myself, and how I got through that, and I actually adopted this from a professional athlete at the time, was visualization exercises. So I would think to myself, like, what is the Grand Slam look like? What does, you know, the best case scenario look like? And I actually carried that into my career. And so now I think about, you know, what does crushing this year look like? And then I really back into what are the actionable behaviors that I really have to go through to get there? And then how can I tie metrics and measurables to those things so I can keep myself in, you know, milestone management, if you will. And so that, you know, I think sports can do a lot for kids and adolescents growing up, but that really did a lot for me in my career to help me get through, you know, goal setting long term. And I'll just speak to one goal I think that stayed with me for 10 years now is that I always set for myself monthly, is that I put myself in an uncomfortable situation every month. I call it sweaty palm events. But I do something uncomfortable. I look at my calendar to make sure something is on there that stretches me and makes me grow. And sometimes I hate myself for it. But you know, over the course of time, it has helped me to grow and develop. And so that's just how I look at goal setting.
Love that. Vanna, next question's for you.
All right.
Can you tell us about a time you were faced with a really tough decision? How did you approach it? And did you weigh the impacts, and what was the result?
So the most tough choice I made in my life, I had to give you a little bit history of myself and something personal, is the doctors have diagnosed with me saying that I love children. They have diagnosed with me that I'll never have kids. But I didn't give up. So I went for almost 20 years of IVF protocols. I pretty much tortured my own body and mind. So I ended up into some sort of a state, like a semi-mild depression state, where when I'm walking by at work, I used to use, if I see the children pictures, I used to stand there and the tears used to roll down. So my husband detected that and he said, okay, let's create a diversion for you. So he asked me to go for an MBA, so I signed up for top programs. The funny thing is, the news that I got pregnant and the news that I got into Kellogg and the news that I got promoted came on the same day. And it is tough, but all my mentors, and I surrounded myself with good bosses and mentors. Almost everyone told me that pick 2 out of those 3. Promotion, baby, or Kellogg and promotion kind of stuff. So when I thought about it, I took all the feedback and I prayed about it, and I said, when God gave me all 3 at once, maybe he might give me the strength. You never know. So I signed up for all three. But I surrendered myself with a plan, with a strict schedule, help from my husband, and a nanny. I used to pay half of my salary or 3/4 of my salary to the nanny, stuff like that. So fast forward 2 years from that point, now I have 2 beautiful boys, which I cherish them because I know it's not easy to have them like most of the women. And completed MBA, got promoted few times, but it is hard work. It is a tough choice, but it went all the way good to the completion, but it didn't come easy. We had to work towards that.
Yeah, I love that. Surround yourself with the support.
With the support, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I didn't know that about you, Vanna. And when you said that you chose all 3, I wanted to pump my fist in the air because yes, and that you were given the strength to get through that. Yes, that's awesome.
Yeah, love that. Angela, for you, have you had to overcome a mistake you've made? No, none of us. Can you explain the situation and what you learned?
A mistake. It's hard to think about a mistake, and it's not because I'm perfect. It's because I don't know if to talk about today's mistake, yesterday's mistake, last week's mistake, but one that has really stuck with me and that I've grown a lot from is what I'll share with you today. So I had an employee come to me and she said, Angela, I have a problem. I need to come up with a way to fix it. And here I am, I jump at the opportunity. I'm like, okay, what's the problem? And I say, okay, you do X, Y, and Z, take all that information, go at it, report back to me on how it goes. And a couple days later, I realized that she hasn't really done anything to fix the issue at hand. So I go to her, have a conversation. She told me that I made her feel like she wasn't doing her job and she felt a little stuck. So, of course, as a manager, I felt pretty crummy about it. I made my employee feel about this big. So I thought about it a lot. I said, how can I have came to that conversation and to that meeting differently to make them feel better and more empowered? And from that, I learned that I need to stop and listen more. And instead of jumping in and doing like I'm used to, I needed to grow my employees. And what grow means to me is G, understanding their goal and getting that goal out of them and letting them have the scope of what it's going to look like after we fix everything. R is reality. So what is the reality today and how are we going to overcome it, which is the O. How are we going to overcome and what are our opportunities to get better? But the most important thing and what I was 100% missing the first time around was the W, and that's the will. And that employee and the people that you work with have to have the will to go after it themselves. You can't tell them what to do. They have to want to go and do it themselves. And just to empower them instead of talking over or telling them what to do, I think is the biggest thing that I've learned so far.
Vanna, coming to you. How do we become better advocates for our fellow female leaders? What do we need to do as an industry to move forward with more equality at the top?
That's a lengthy question. I'll go with you, Angela, the way you explained about the growth reality and opportunity and the will. We need to be intentional about bringing the diverse thinking. And we need to be intentional about finding the talent. We need to be intentional finding the gems, hidden gems, right? And sometimes internally and externally, or externally if possible. And also be intentional in guiding them. Like the way you're talking about is, when you put a person, first find the leader, find the gaps in the organization which you're looking at it, right? All of us, we need to do that. And if the leader happens to be a woman, great. Let's go for it. But when you hire a person, and especially I'm in the technology space, infrastructure, I live in basement most of the time, it's very tough to find women in that infrastructure operations 24/7 kind of a roles. So I was looking at the gaps and I'm saying like, okay, let's bring in a diverse thinking. And we found a few leaders. And then after a few months or so, touch base with them and see how they're growing. So if we could find an opportunity and find the hidden talent and put the people in place, that worked at various levels, kind of a stuff. Coming back to, what is the second part, Tammy? Let me answer that question.
What do we need to do as an industry to move forward with more equality at the top?
Yes, especially being in the trucking industry, is, as I mentioned about the hidden talent, intentional about it, is we could bring in the trucking industry expertise or non-trucking industry expertise, but bring them and grow them. Like I came from non-trucking industry. I've been here 4 years, but my peers like Tammy and lot of others, I learn a lot. Like every Thursday at JB Hunt, we have all executives meet for like at least a couple of hours. Even though a lot of them try not to sit next to me because I run operations and most of the time systems will be challenged. But the beauty of it is they taught me, my leaders, my peers taught me what is the transportation, trucking industry. And I grew from that kind of a stuff. So we need to handhold in the areas which we need to teach them and be intentional about it. And what happened, what I learned from JB Hunt, I'm pretty sure that can be taught for the rest of the women in trucking kind of stuff. So it is being intentional and hand-holding and teaching where it needs to be and let them grow.
I'm going to ask you the same question.
So I love what Vanna was saying about being intentional with how you speak to other women or how you treat them. For me, it's really validating them is probably the biggest thing that we can do. It's important for us to understand and be intentional about knowing that every woman is not going to have the same journey as you. We are all going to experience things differently. We're going to have different takeaways from conversations. And just because they say that they feel a certain way and you haven't experienced that does not mean that it's not valid. So we need to be there for them, understand them. But there are other small things that we can do to help them. So when we are going into a meeting, we can center them. If they're always sitting at the end of the table, maybe suggest that they sit in the middle. And if they have good ideas and they're being talked over, highlight them and say, hey, I know that you've got a good point, but so-and-so is speaking. I'd love for her to finish her thought before we move on to the next subject. And another thing that we can do is champion them. So a lot of the times you'll hear stereotype maybe behind closed doors. Well, you know, women are great at relationships, so that's why she's doing such a good job. It's really important for us to come with that person's qualifications as well. It's no, she's doing a good job because the data that she pulled told this story that the customer was buying into. It's because she highlighted market conditions that's going to save our company X amount of money. So making sure that you are behind closed doors, also being their champion, is very important.
Yeah, I love that.
I love that too, Angela. I love that so much. And one of the things that recently struck me is I think personification is really important. So when you do have a seat or a voice, that you don't play small. And I caught myself, I'll go on these tangents about, we need to do this, and here's an idea, and blah, blah, blah. But I would caveat it with, hey, this is just my opinion. Or, sorry about that rant. Or, I would pull down the power of what I just said with those caveats. And I stopped. And now, to lighten up the moment or whatever, because that's what I do, instead of saying something like that, I say, I said what I said. Because I think it's important that to not play small, don't dilute what you have to say. It's important. And the other thing that, just to add to it is, I find myself spending a lot of time with men who are heavily invested with getting more women around the table. I don't spend time with those who aren't on the bus. And so I have some really wonderful colleagues who will pull me aside and say, hey, this happened and here's how I responded or whatever. I love that. And I always am like, hey, please do this. You're not putting me out. 30 minutes on my calendar is not going to hurt anything. But I think spending time and investing in that feedback with people who will move is really important. And recognize the fact on these people are intentional about moving the needle around equality, gender equality.
That's amazing. A quote I heard the other day was, empowered women empower women. That's amazing. It definitely hits home on your intentional statement. You have to be intentional about uplifting everyone around you if you have that power to continue to grow women in trucking.
And I find it interesting, as I have leadership roles available, that I have to go encourage females to apply, and we need to get past that. Like, the position is out there, go apply. And so I think when we finally figure out that piece as well, they feel like they need to have 10 out of 10 on their resume.
Right.
Yes.
And if they only have 9, they're not ready. And I'm like, no, you're ready. Like, put yourself out there and go for it. So I think that's something we have to continuously be coaching as we mentor young ladies specifically. So
Absolutely.
Well, Tammy, I think part of it is because we've been raised that doors should be opened for us before we walk through them, versus just opening the door and stepping through it by yourself.
Absolutely.
good perspective. Yep. Okay, this is the last one we have. Lindsay, coming to you. What are some key learnings you've experienced from navigating through 2020 or COVID?
2020 has been a doozy. A lot of great learning experiences. One thing that I've really learned is how important it is to align yourself with the cultural values of an organization. And it's not just what's on the wall, it's what's lived. And one thing that has been so important to me this year, and I'm not being rah-rah, I just, is our company's safety culture. And I'm the first one to admit, when you're coming to an organization, you hear their values and someone says safety, you're like, oh, cool, safety. This year, the A team was in the game, safety A team, and we put the health and safety and well-being of our people first, and that created such a sense of comfort for me. And so I've learned that this year, that safety matters a lot, and we all know that. But I think we learned a lot more about that and how challenging and thoughtful that job is, or all of those jobs are. So I learned that. But the other thing I really learned from a personal perspective is, in my house, we've got 2 careers and 2 small children. And I was very much used to, my children go to school and they learn there. They learn a little bit at home, but a lot at school. And going and navigating my career and not worrying about, and actually focusing on creating a fulfilling and thriving environment for my team. But when we went into quarantine for those months, I had to create that space in my house along with my family. And one thing I learned is that it's imperative to surround yourself with people who are rallied around your career inside of work and outside of work. And I'm super fortunate to have that. We sat down as a family and really named, what does it take to make us all run on all cylinders every single day here together for the next X months, and backed into that. And I think it really, it taught me a lot. And I think outside of COVID, that has to be, first and foremost for folks. I read a quote recently that said, ambitious women either have supportive partners or no partner at all. And dang, is that true? So and true. I think this year particularly taught me to be grateful for that.
Yeah, that is so true. Such a powerful statement. I learned that 3 dogs while you're working at home is way too many. That's what I learned. Well, hey, we hope that you found just a few nuggets that you can take back and implement into your career. Again, this was a little out of our norm in that we had to pre-record, but again, I hope you find some value in it. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to spend with us. and we hope to connect again in the future.